There's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from being good at something in a system that was never built for you. You keep adapting, you keep delivering, and at some point you realize the problem was never your output. It was the box you were trying to fit yourself in. My guest today has built her entire career helping women to stop doing that. Stay with me. I'm excited about this one. So I got to tell you first, I found her on LinkedIn, and I always think about LinkedIn as I get all these things in my box where people are like, I'm so excited to meet with you. And then 2 minutes later, they're like, can you do this? And so I was hoping that she wasn't going to reject me. And she didn't. Before we get into it, I want to do something I do with every guest on this show. We're going to raise a glass together. I've got tea. Katie, what you got?
I have green tea, actually.
I love it. So let's raise a glass. What are we toasting to today? You got anything good? At the end of the
Let's
day.
toast to unapologetic ambition, chasing their dreams on their terms.
Oh, I love that. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. So Katie, tell me a little bit about yourself. And then I'm going to do your bio, but tell me a little bit about yourself.
Where could I begin? Well, I'm a Philadelphia native, and so I've spent my whole life being told to tone it down. So I can tell you anything, and I've spent my entire life resisting that and just fighting against that. And I think it has propelled me forward to be a great mom and achieve my dream of motherhood, and then also achieve my dreams in my career, climbing the corporate ladder and then entering into the entrepreneurial journey with the creation of Unapologetic Ambition. And so I think if I could sum it up in a little bit of 30 seconds, it's just someone who never accepted the status quo and pushed herself through to get to where she wanted to be on her terms.
I love that. I think that's what made me love you so much online. So you were corporate for quite a while, right?
Yeah, over 20 years.
And then you got out, or are you still in corporate?
No, I got out. I left actually. I had no intention of leaving, but I was really burning out and I couldn't see it, but everyone around me could. And the last straw was actually my mom. I don't think it matters how old we are. We need our moms, right? And she said, you need a change. This is not you. I can see it. And I was like, what? Now my mom I've had a job since I was 15. And I decided to leave, and I was going to take some time off and get my son off to college and get my daughter into high school. And then my mom very suddenly and somewhat traumatically passed away. And her death was a catalyst for me to say, I'm now at a crossroads. I've never been here before in my life. I can either go back to where I was and I was successful and I can continue climbing and working in that way, or I can follow this calling that's been on my heart for a long time and impact the world in a different way and leave behind a different kind of legacy that isn't tangible, but is more meaningful. And I opted to go that route instead and create Unapologetic Ambition.
I love that. And I didn't say that before, but you are the founder and CEO of Unapologetic Ambition. And you're also a leadership coach who works with ambitious women to get clear on what they actually want, strengthen their voice and visibility, and build strategy to navigate power structures without burning out or selling out. So you work in authority, nonconformity, and building a career that supports your life, not the other way around. So welcome.
It's an honor to be here. And I think that's just your authenticity, right? This is the moment that we're in.
I'm like, it is what it is. I'm like, stay with me. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. But Unapologetic Ambition is a name with intention behind it. Can you tell me about that path?
Yes. So one of my biggest peeves, I think, as a leader was my team would consistently apologize just for taking up space. And any woman, even young girls, I have 2 daughters, they would walk into the room and they'd say, sorry to interrupt, but we're sorry for everything started with a sorry. And I said, I'm so sick of women apologizing. Like, you don't need to apologize for existing, for taking up space, for chasing your dreams. We're human beings. We're allowed to exist. So the unapologetic was very intentional, because I think as women, we need to be reminded that you don't have to apologize for being you, for losing your words. Right?
Yeah.
You just show up. And then ambition is because my career has been in talent acquisition for over 20 years. And I've been a woman navigating that corporate ladder, and then a woman in charge of building the systems, processes, and teams that pull people through that hiring process. And I noticed that ambition for women was almost like a dirty word. And we would try not to talk about it or say, well, I want to be humble and I want to, I guess I'm lost for the words now, as we were talking about, but make yourself smaller instead of saying, no, I'm ambitious and this is what I want to go after. So hence Unapologetic Ambition. You can chase your dreams and you don't have to apologize for it. You do what you want on your terms.
Love that. I just talked to somebody about this a couple of days ago. I was doing a panel for one of the chambers, and they were talking about being an entrepreneur and making money. And I said, here's the thing that bothers me. Why is it not okay for me to say, one of my goals is to make money? There's nothing
Yes.
wrong with that. I'm an entrepreneur. Of course, I want to make money. Do I want to do
Yes.
things for the common good? Yes, I also want to do that, but I also want to make money. And when a man says that, it seems to be okay that you're like, he's a capitalist. He's doing great. He wants to make money. He wants to do these great things. But when a woman does it, it's like, she doesn't support anybody. She's only out for money. And I've never understood that. And I'm like, you can do both.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. And it's okay to say that out loud. And I think that that's that societal conditioning that we've all been exposed to, where it's men are encouraged to get after it and be aggressive. But if a woman does it, she's seen as too much or stepping outside of her lane. And
Yeah.
one of the things I always talk about is I think women are conditioned to be grateful to be in the room.
Yes.
And maybe that room is the first room you're grateful to be in, but you have your sights set on 6 rooms higher.
Yeah.
And so I am grateful to be in this room, but this isn't my last stop. It's my first.
Right.
And I'm okay with that because the 6th one is going to give me the money that I'm looking for. And I
You
also
are.
think that to give back to the greater good, you have to have money to be able to do that. So if that's a big part of your goal, there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm chasing the dollars, but I have intentions of giving back in a significant way once I get there. And then you have to be true to your word and do that.
I knew I liked you. When I saw you, I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I like her. So was there a moment when you hit something in your own career that made you realize that you had been bending to fit a system that wasn't designed for you?
Yes. I had gotten to the highest level of the ladder. I was working with the top tier of my organization. And I found that the higher I got and the more involved I was at that level, the less fulfilled and the
Mm,
less happy I was. And then for the first time in my life, I found myself conforming a little bit.
mm, yeah.
And I was actually physically making myself sick, which I didn't recognize until I left. But when you are conforming and you aren't showing up as the authentic version of you, it internalizes in different ways. And
Yeah.
so my moment was just, wow, on paper, I'm ticking all of the accomplishment boxes.
Yeah.
And inside, I am miserable and I don't like what I'm seeing in the mirror. I'm not comfortable with who I am. This isn't who I am. And if I want to show up as me, I can't be here anymore. I've outgrown this place and I'm not sure where I want to go next. And that was the turning point for me. And it took me a few months to figure out what I was going to do next, but I knew that wasn't it.
Yeah. It's we have a business, we do leadership training, and Amira evolved from that. And I had worked in corporate for, 25 years, was a top ranking salesperson, all the awards and president's clubs and all of those things. And I remember being miserable, and I was miserable with all the people that I worked with. And it took me leaving because it was a really bad environment that I was in at the time. And I
Yes.
had had a surgery. And so I remember like getting a message from one of my managers that was just like, you know what, I'm not going back to this. And my husband said, we can either you're going to leave or we're going to figure out what we're going to do. And so I said, I think I can run this business full time. And I
Mhm.
did. And I look back at pictures of myself, and I think I posted one on Instagram, maybe just in the last couple of days. My face was so inflamed from the stress and everything else that I had been dealing with. Even though it was a horrible place that I was working at, I probably didn't make it any better because I wasn't being my authentic self. So I was just as bad for them as they were for me. And I
Yes.
think that's what it took for me to get out of that. And at the time, I was like, this is such a horrible place, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to be the martyr. But looking back, I was like, you know what? I wasn't good for them either. My time had passed. I think I did what I needed to do. But yeah, it's crazy when you look back and you're like, gosh, this was not what I was meant to be doing at all.
Yes. And I love that you say that because one of the things I always talk about is accountability. I think sometimes we look at accountability and think fault or
Yeah.
ownership of something we did wrong instead of ownership over everything.
Yeah.
And to your point, I had a moment in that other company where I knew it was no longer for me. And I waited another 10 months before I left. And
Yeah.
when I left, I had to look back at that 10 months and say, even though some of the things that were happening there were
Mhm.
really toxic and wrongfully done to me, I own a piece of that because I knew it and I stayed anyway. And I didn't take steps to remove myself during those 10 months. I was just hoping to figure it out. And there's beauty in that accountability and the growth that happens afterward once you're out of it and recognizing that you could own a piece of it.
Yeah. One of my girlfriends is a high school administrator. all K through 12 administrator. And we were just talking about this on my last podcast episode. And she was just saying, it's just crazy how you recognize what it looked like from the outside when you weren't, involved before. Crazy.
Yes, absolutely.
So you work with ambitious women specifically, and I think ambition is a word that gets complicated for women just like it does for men. What are the patterns that you see in the women who come to you, and where are they losing ground without fully realizing it? Because I think it's pretty complicated sometimes.
It is definitely complicated, and no two women are the same, and everyone is in a different stage of their career. I help women at the entry level of their career who are
Yeah.
saying, I want to grow and I don't know how to get my hands on more stretch projects, or I don't know how to get in front of the right people. And then I deal with executives who say, I'm ready for the next level and
Yeah.
I can't break down this last door. And here's what I've done this far. So it is pretty complex, and everybody has different motivations and they're at different stages in their lives. But I think the biggest pattern that I see is this feeling of being stuck
Yeah.
and not knowing how to get out of where they are, regardless, not knowing what the next step is to take. And so standing still. And that's something I always tell people: you're not stuck, you're standing still. You're never stuck. As long
Yeah.
as you have two working legs or a way of mobility, you can move. The problem is, as women, we like to plan everything out before we make a move, right? We really like to minimize all of the risks. And sometimes you can't see more than 10 feet in front of you. So you have to
Yeah.
make a decision and you have to take a step in one direction. And as you get closer or further, you decide how you're going to shift. So I think the biggest pattern I see is that feeling of being stuck and unable to figure out how to take that first step, how to pick up your foot and just go and do
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. I never would have left corporate had I not had surgery. I think the surgery that I had, and I actually, looking back, I don't think the surgery was as necessary as I thought it was. It was necessary because the doctor said this is something you needed to do, but I think this was somebody's way of saying this is not for you. And so I think me going out when I did and being out for that period of time and realizing what it was like on the outside without the toxicity of where I was, when it was time
Yes.
to go back, I remember thinking, you're right on the precipice. Do you go or do you stay? Do you go back to what you've been dealing with, or do you take the leap and try to make something else work? And I think that surgery was the best thing that I've ever done, even though, I've got scars and stuff to prove it, but it was the best thing that's ever happened for my family and my career, for sure.
I'm sorry that you went through that surgery. I'm not sure what the surgery was, but I can't even imagine. I think any surgery is troubling to begin with. It's scary and intimidating. And then when it puts you in a position where you're reassessing your life, it adds a whole other layer
Yeah.
of fear and nervousness to it. But I also think there's a saying I live by, which is whatever you believe in, God source, nothing. Life will make a situation increasingly more uncomfortable
Mm.
if you're not meant to be there. And
I
so
like
the
that.
more you try to stay, the more uncomfortable you'll become until you're forced out. And it sounds, you and I share, I didn't have a surgery, but I will tell you, it took me 2 years to recover my health after I left. Even though I was starting a new company, I
Oh,
went through a ton of stuff because I just neglected my physical health during that time. And I think you recognize how uncomfortable you were, and you should have left sooner. You should have made that move sooner, and you're so much healthier now that you have. And life starts to look a little bit different once you make that decision.
I met with somebody back in November, and she said to me, "You're going to start surrounding yourself with women who have very like minded thought processes." And it's interesting the women I've been surrounding myself with, or that I've felt pulled towards, or things, because I think, same thing, it's probably 2, 3 years for me to get my health back and like all the different modalities of things that I was doing because I was so sick. And I say this and I mean it, like, I truly mean it. I think that job would have killed me if I had not left. I think it was the stress that I was under, there were a lot of microaggressions, just a bunch of other things that were just horrible. But, you know, the way that it was and my mindset at the time was just not, it wasn't good at all. And so I think that would have been the end of my health, would have just spiraled down had I not left, for sure.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's hard to recognize that or prioritize your health, especially as women,
Yeah.
because I think we might look, especially sales is an aggressive, I've recruited salespeople forever, and it's just an aggressive area to work.
Yeah.
But if you're really good at it and you love it, you can make a ton of money. And
Yeah.
when you think about your income and how that funds your life, it's hard for you to step away because you go, well, if you're lucky, you go, look at this great life I have and this life I'm able to give
Yeah.
myself, my family, whatever. And then you go, if I step away from this, what does that mean for my life? And
Yeah.
then you don't realize that if you don't step away from this, what does
Yeah.
it mean for your life? And that
Yeah.
is something I talk to women about, is knowing when you still want to try to move up within the same organization and recognizing when maybe it's time to move out and up
Yeah.
somewhere else, and getting really clear about that and not letting it go too long.
Yeah. Those commission checks, I mean, they'll hold you. And I'll never forget, my manager said to me one day, my commission check was wrong. It was lower than what it should have been. And I remember walking into her office, which was next to mine, and I was standing there. And I said, "Hey, my commission check is wrong." And she looked at me and she said, "Well, aren't you happy with what you have?" She said, "If you make what you're entitled to, you'll be making more money than me." And I said, "But that's not what I earned. I earned,
Right.
this isn't," but that was her mentality. And so that was the back and forth between the two of us. And I was like, yeah, I mean, there was a whole bunch of other things, but I'll never forget that. And we had a conversation about it, and she wrote, "Yeah, I said that." She's like, "I did say that because I thought it was a significant amount and I couldn't understand why she was questioning it." I was like, "Because it was wrong.
Right.
It was wrong."
And I'm not working for free here. This isn't volunteering. This is,
Yeah.
I'm here to earn a paycheck and you need to pay me what I'm worth.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was crazy. So anyway, the visibility piece. I hear a lot of women who are doing excellent work and still not being seen for it. How do you get past that?
I think a lot of times what I see is we as women think if we perform really well and we
Mm.
deliver really well, then our work will be recognized and
Yeah.
we'll be rewarded for it. And it's
Yeah.
this passive approach to visibility instead of saying, no, you need to make sure that your work is strategically visible in the right rooms with the right people. And there are times where you can access those rooms and access those people and present what you do. And there are times where you have to proactively have advocates for you who have access to rooms that you're not in, who you
Uh,
know are going to represent your work and speak for you as well. And that's something that needs to start day one when you start your job. Who are
yeah.
you connecting with that will advocate for you and speak to your good work and how your good work is impacting the business in rooms you haven't gained access to yet? And
Yeah.
how are you positioning yourself to be visible within the organization and share what you do and just how it's impacting the company?
So what's the cost of being invisible?
Stagnation. You will never move if you're invisible. And companies will continue. Companies' main focus is results. So if you're generating results and you're a cog in their machine and you're doing well, great. They don't have to look at you because there's nothing broken and there's nothing superior that's really shining a light. And so they're going to keep going on. You're great, but you're not something we need to pay attention to. We're going to fix problems and we're going to grow. That's where we're going to focus our attention. So I think if you don't create that visibility, you will have that illusion of being stuck. You will be at a standstill. You will be stagnant where you are.
So when we talk about authority and voice, because I think there's a difference between having a title and actually standing in your authority. I mean, I think a lot of people can have, you know, I can say I'm the CEO of D5 Consulting Group and I can, give all these titles, but a lot of women have the title and are still waiting for permission. What do you think authority really looks like and how do women actually get there?
Authority to me looks like authenticity. And I talk about this a lot. And I shared in the beginning of our conversation, I've been somebody who's been told to tone it down, right? Or, Katie, you can't say that. I hear that all the time. Yes,
Yeah.
I can. Every time you open your mouth, you're teaching other people how to treat you, and you're teaching other people how to receive you and what boundaries you have and what you bring to the table. And so I think your authority comes from presenting yourself with confidence, and confidence comes from preparation
Yeah.
and being willing to be non-negotiable about some of your boundaries as well. There are some people you see, they walk into a room and you feel the energy shift in a positive way, or you look at them. I see women sometimes walk into a room and I'm like, I need to talk to her because she just came in here with the world behind her and she's happy to be here. You can feel it. You can feel her authority. And when you come in meek and timid and you're looking for a seat in the back and you are soft toned and you don't speak up about what you're doing with confidence and awareness, you let people speak over you in meetings or interrupt you, you allow that, you're losing authority every single time. But when you show up and say, I was invited into this room, I have a purpose to be here. I have value to add, and nothing's going to stop me from doing that in a professional way. You claim your authority in front of everyone and you let them know this is how we're going to interact,
I
and
love
you be
that.
unapologetic about it.
You're definitely from the Northeast.
Yes.
I love that. So voice is a big part of what you coach. What does it mean? So if somebody does come into a room and they're looking at ways to strengthen their voices and things like that, what does it look like to actually strengthen your voice in a way that actually moves your career forward? Or not even just your career, like maybe you're in a networking event or somewhere else and you're trying to have more of a voice. How do you do that?
I tell women, don't wait to be called on. Don't wait to be introduced. Don't wait for an invitation. Speak up and find those moments. If you know what a meeting is about and you see the attendee list on that meeting or that networking event, do your due diligence ahead of time so that when you walk in, you can say, Amira, I recognize your face from LinkedIn. I was listening to your podcast. It's so great to meet you. And then you move on to someone else and you're the person initiating the conversation now in that networking event. But then also in a meeting, if you know what the meeting is about and you know where you fit into that organization, you go in prepared to participate beyond the area you're expected to present. You
Yeah.
contribute ideas, you comment on other people's shares and how it interacts with what you do, and you do that intentionally. It's going beyond the expectation of your role or what
Yeah.
you're doing there, I think, to claim that voice.
So what does nonconformity look like? Because I think people think nonconformity is really dramatic and it doesn't really need to be that way. I think the reality is a little bit quieter. So what does it look like in practice in a corporate or an organizational structure?
It is, I always, whenever I say corporate systems were built by men for men, I'll get a little bit of hate about that. Like, oh, you're a man hater and, you're bashing men. And I'm saying, no, the corporate construct was built from a man's perspective. It's been largely driven by men for a very long time. They don't live a woman's experience. And therefore, they don't build constructs with women in mind. And that's the
Mhm.
best case scenario. So when you come into that system as a woman and you have this system built with male thinking, male patterns, etc., and you try to conform to that, you start sacrificing your authenticity, which impacts your performance.
Yeah.
And then you are not able to climb that ladder or move into the rooms that you want to move into because it's unnatural for you.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to really be aware of, we see the good old boys club sometimes where to fit in, you have to go to the cigar club at night or on the fishing trip if you're down here in Florida. You have to do those things. I don't know about you, but I'm not going out on a boat with 12 men and me. I'm
100%.
not doing it. I will find another way to connect with you. And that's a moment where we actually had an experience like that at a former organization where we had a woman speak up and say, the reward for the sales team was this fishing trip, but I'm the only woman on the team. And so I'm uncomfortable with that. Could we find another way to celebrate? That's
Right.
nonconformity. It's calling attention to it and saying, hey, did you ever consider maybe this makes people uncomfortable? And I really want to celebrate with my team. Can we do
Yeah.
it somewhere else? And
Yeah.
people are very receptive to that. You can do it in a really constructive way. Or I also think some of the subtle ways are women tend to get the office housework put on them. Can you
Yes.
plan the party? Can you coordinate the meeting?
Take the
And there's a
note.
quiet resistance that you can have with that and say, I love parties just as much as you. Unfortunately, I don't have the bandwidth with the metrics that I have to hit this month. And I've had to do that in meetings where, as the only woman in the group at a director level, they've said, Katy, why don't you coordinate that? And I said, well, since it's so-and-so's meeting and he has an assistant, I think it would be a better use of her time to coordinate this meeting for all of us. And I can get working on the to-do list from this
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah.
And so there's a way to quietly non-conform without creating confrontation. And then there's a way where you can be confrontational and say, absolutely not. And you have to choose where your comfort level is for that.
Yeah. I do a little bit of both sometimes. I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Or sometimes I'll be like, you know what, I'll figure out a better way to say that, but just give me a minute and I'll think of a much, much better way.
Yes.
So if we talk about clarity and strategy, when a woman comes to you and she's successful on paper, she's got all the accolades and the titles and all that good stuff, but something is off. What does clarity work actually look like if you're doing clarity work? And what are you actually asking her to look at just generally?
What always happens is almost always, I should say, is a woman will come in and she'll describe this picture in a very professional, academic way and say, well,
Yeah.
this is where I am and this is the goal that I want. And I was like, okay, that was beautiful. Let's cut all of that out. Let's cut all of the beauty out. Give me the raw scenario. And this isn't one of the first calls where trust hasn't been built yet, right? But it's like, listen, there's no judgment. We're not recording this. Put it on the table. What does your reality look like?
Yeah.
What does your reality look like in work? What does your reality look like in life? And let's talk about that. And now tell me about your goals, because you have to know where you are truly in the rawest, ugliest form sometimes, or the most beautiful. And you have to know where you want to go. Everything else we can map out in the middle. But if we can't get down to that in a really raw and honest way, then we can't map out a successful route to your goal. And so I think clarity begins with this honest, raw reality of what is the current situation, without any fluff, without tiptoeing around it. Let's just call a spade a spade. Even if I'll get a lot of women who say, well, I don't want to say that I feel like I'm being discriminated against, but these 7 things happen. And I'm like, okay, that's real. And you may not want to leave and you may not want to confront that directly. We can deal with that, but just name it. Name it, get really clear on what it is, what you're feeling, what has you stuck or agitated, and where you want to go. And then we'll figure it out together. But you've got to get really raw and honest with yourself. And I don't want to drag this on, but there's something I tell everybody. I actually tell my kids this. I say, at the end of the day, you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, did I do the best I could today? Because you could lie to me, you could lie to your boss, you could lie to anyone else, but yeah, I put forth my best effort. But if you look in the mirror, you can't lie to yourself. You can be like, I know I did not. Or I know that that wasn't the real truth. The real truth is I am terrified about leaving my company and going to another one. I'm so scared to make this jump and I didn't share that. That's the raw truth. That's the raw reality. That's the clarity that you need. If it's fear, we can deal with that.
So speaking of that, you have a 4-week program called the Next Level Clarity Sprint. Can you tell me what that experience is designed to do?
Sure. So this is actually a 4-week sprint. A lot of my coaching, the more intensive one, will go on for a few months, where it's really changing a career trajectory or working through a period of time. The 4-week clarity sprint is more of I'm in a situation, or I have a specific project, I have a specific goal, or I'm stuck in one area and I need to not only get out of that stagnation, but I need to move it forward clearly. And so what we'll start to do is that work on that clarity, get really clear on what you're doing, get really clear on the goal, and then map out the in between for you. Start some of that work. And then when you leave, I leave you with a strategic map of your next steps that we've worked through together. So you have something tangible to walk away with and say, okay, I've done all the work, I've laid all the groundwork, and I know where I'm going next. So it just sets you up for success after that 4 weeks.
I love that. And then if somebody wanted to go deeper, you have a strategic expansion coaching program?
Yes. And that is a highly customized program. Again, it might be someone who is looking to break into the executive space, somebody who might be opening their own company and is really looking for a coach throughout that process. And it could be 3 months, 6 months, a year. So that would be a much more customized process with the same Ascend framework that I use, and getting that clarity and mapping it out. But it's more of an arm in arm. Oh, you're working on a presentation. Let's look at that together. Let me help you. Let me guide you in a deeper level than just helping you get clear and map out what you're going to do next. We're going to partner the whole way through that one.
Okay. I love it. Well, thank you. That was really, really good. I mean, I could talk to you probably for the next 2 hours, but I'm like, I won't take a ton of your time. I know you got a lot going on, but we always end with a journal prompt. So here's your reflection for the week. Where in your career are you still waiting for permission, and not from a specific person, but from the system, from the version of success that you inherited? And what would you do differently if you stopped waiting? So I want you to write that down. Anything you want to add?
Just, I think if I could encourage your audience to do anything, it's to look in the mirror and say, I'm proud of who I am. I know what I want, and I'm going to chase it no matter what anybody says to me. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to take the step, and I'm just going to show up unapologetically and do what I want to do in a very professional way.
I love that. Katy, thank you. This conversation is exactly what I think the audience needed to hear. And so for everyone listening, you can find Katy at unapologeticambition.org. And her full link tree will be in the show notes, along with the details on the Next Level Clarity Sprint and the Strategic Expansion Coaching. We'll put both of those up there. So if this resonated with you, I want you to share it and pass it on to any women in your circle who are over delivering and feel like they're undervalued. Plus, I think your link tree will probably have your LinkedIn links and
It
stuff on it.
does. It'll have LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and then we're just introducing a YouTube and a TikTok as well.
I just started YouTube too, and I said it's just there's so much involved in all the things that we're doing. I was like, it's overwhelming, but I'm like, I think this is what needs to happen. It's just going to be a well-rounded thing. So it's getting
Yeah.
there.
One
So
step at a
as
time.
always, yeah, as always, no neat wrap up here. Until next time, Katie, thank you so much for agreeing to be on here. I really appreciate it, and I hope we stay connected. I still, like I said, I follow you. I see you've got some good things going on LinkedIn.
Thank you. I would love to as well.
All right, thanks.